Hello, friends. Recently, I've been talking about the 8 meannesses of the heart that Sri Yukteswar lays out for us in his book, The Holy Science. And the idea is that if we can cleanse our hearts of these meannesses, we awaken within us the heart's natural love. And that natural love causes our consciousness to rise automatically into the heights of God consciousness. So these attitudes are, and habits, reflexes, however you want to think of these barnacles that cloud the heart, they're very important to focus on and eradicate from our minds and our hearts. I talked about fear the other day, and there's more that I'd like to say about it. In thinking about getting rid of fear in our lives, in our minds, in our bodies, that fear consciousness is paralyzing and it's poisonous. We want to be free of that. We want to be fearless. Yogananda says, be fearless. Cautiously, don't act in a foolhardy manner, but do everything you can, Yogananda said, to prepare to be safe, like wearing a mask. He used to do that during the Spanish flu epidemic in 1918. But do everything you can, and then don't be fearful. Give it to God completely. Let Him take care of it. Let Him take care of you. Well, one of the hardest things, one of the things that causes many of us a lot of fear is not that something may happen to us, that we could die in this pandemic or a war or a civil war or all the many worries that can come into our minds during this very fraught time that we live in. A lot of political unrest, a lot of global unrest, and of course sickness and a lot of financial difficulty. It's a very, as the old Chinese curse said, may you live in interesting times. Well, here we are in interesting times. But it's one thing to worry about your own health and safety, and a little easier, I think, to give that to God and just say, I am in your hands. Whatever is your will is what I'll do. And we do that self-offering with varying degrees of success, but it's a little easier. On the other hand, we care about our loved ones, and we worry about them. Are they being safe? Are they being taken care of? And this can be a great cause of fear. So how do we cope with that? What do we do? Well, we have to practice every day giving them to God and calling on God, bringing God's energy into our lives, into their lives, and consciously praying for them that God will take care of them and protect them and do what is best for their highest good. It's one thing to trust for ourselves, but it's another to trust for those we love. But we have to practice that daily. And I would suggest before you go to sleep at night, have that be one of your last thoughts, consciously giving those we love into God's care, to consciously make that effort to surround them with God's loving protection and His light. God has sent His angels for each person on this earth and for each creature, I believe, on this earth. And so let's trust God that He has a plan for every person, and to surrender and trust in that plan. It's not easy. That's why we have to work at it every day. And we have to get to that point in ourselves in which we are even-minded. How many times in the Bhagavad Gita does it say words to the effect of be even-minded and cheerful? The passage I was reading most recently said, the wise consider with an equal mind and eye a clod of clay, a stone, and a bar of gold. And that's not easy to do either. But we have to see everything in this world as made of dream stuff. All is one in God, and God is in everything. So when we encounter praise, let's not be all puffed up and think, oh, finally someone recognized how amazing I am. Or blame, when we get blamed for something, oh, that's so unfair, it's not my fault. Well, I kind of did this, but oh, it's not my fault. Even-minded, praise or blame should not affect our consciousness. Give the praise to God. He is the doer in all things. Even when we think we are the doer, behind our actions, behind our consciousness, God put our soul into play in this world. And self-realization means realizing that it was always God, forever and always. That's why yogis, when they get near to liberation, meditate and go through all their past lives and realize in every action of every past life that it was always God that was the doer. So let's practice that every day now too. Let's practice feeling, understanding, getting closer and closer to realizing that God is the one acting through us. And when we consider our loved ones and our fear for their safety, our love for them, remember that love is never attached. Love is free. Yogananda and Swami Kriyananda would often say, if our dearest child died, we would be so grief-stricken, and yet if that soul were reborn next door, would we even recognize them? So we have to differentiate what is our attachment and investment in our energy in people, and what is unconditional divine love. And the more that we can trust in God, the more that we can love and surrender to His all-knowing will that's always for our highest good, then the easier it is to be happy, to eradicate fear from our hearts, and just be able to love God through other people and to love the God in other people. There's that beautiful chant of Yogananda's, the desire my great enemy chant. And the last verse is, control the little pranayam, become all-pervading pranayam. You won't have to fear anything anymore. Isn't that a wonderful thought? Not fearing anything anymore. And we do that by controlling our own pranayam, our own energy, our own breath through Kriya Yoga. And also interiorizing that pranayam, interiorizing our own energy, being the master of our own selves. It's the only thing in this world we can control. The only thing we can influence or not, but we can control ourselves, our own emotions, our own feelings, our own fears. And in that way, when we control our own energy, we become the cosmic energy and one with that vastness that is God. And it's all one. And when we become one with it and realize that oneness, then there is no fear. In the other time that I was talking about overcoming fear, the meanness of the heart, I mentioned how I was comforted by my father's presence on the morning before I started the first day of school, as I was waiting for that dreaded school bus to pick me up from my house. And for years after, I had nightmares about school buses. So it just shows you the kinds of crazy things we can be afraid of. But I was thinking of that more and how I had been comforted by the presence of my dad. And yet he couldn't protect me from the tortures of first grade. He probably would have tried if he had known. But I was so horror-stricken that I couldn't even articulate what I was feeling. But God, on the other hand, knows everything that we are going through, everything that we feel, everything that we need. And in thinking about that experience of being so fear-stricken, fortunately, second grade was a lot better. I had a teacher named Mrs. Height, and her first name was Princess Height. And she was an angel. And that helped to soothe my poor little soul. However, the point is that we can trust in God because He knows everything. And so let's relax into Him, or the Divine Mother, relax into her arms. And let's remember one of the beautiful leelas of the Divine Mother in this world through Anandamoy Ma's life. She was the Ananda Mai Ma, means bliss permeated mother. And she was certainly that. And one of the things she said, which I often remind myself of, is whatever happens, it's all right. So let's remember that too. Whatever God does, It's all right. And let's give love and blessing and respect to everyone we meet. And in that way, God will be with us in every person. I just have to tell you one more story, which I find so inspiring. This was right at the beginning of World War II in Germany, right before the time that Hitler was starting to round up the Jews. And in a wealthy neighborhood, there were two neighbors. One was Jewish, one was not. And at this moment in time, that wasn't really an issue. They were just neighbors. And each of them went out for a walk in the early morning. And they would inevitably pass each other on the street near their homes. And they would both very respectfully tip their hats and say, "Good morning, Herr," whatever. I forget their names, but they would address each other formally, but in a friendly manner, and always good-humoredly, and say Guten Tag, good morning. And so this past many years of this ritual of doing this greeting to each other, and they never really got beyond that, but it was a respectful relationship. Well, then Hitler started rounding up the Jews. And one neighbor, the German non-Jewish neighbor, became an official in the government. And the other neighbor, who was Jewish, found himself in a long queue going up to be signed into a concentration camp. And so this Jewish man was standing in line, made his way forward, and couldn't really see what all was happening in front of him until he got to the official's desk. And then he realized that it was his neighbor. And automatically he said, "Good morning, Herr," whatever his name was. And hardly looking up, the official said, "Good morning." And he stamped his paper so that he was free to go. And I often think of that in terms of the kindness, the little kindnesses that we give to others. If we always respect them, all people, all creatures, if we give love, kindness, and respect, that is what we will receive in our time of need. And so let's practice that as a spiritual practice and give kindness under all circumstances and remain even-minded. A clod of clay, a stone, a bar of gold, let it all be the same in your consciousness, and see this life as an opportunity to give love. And when we're loving, there is no fear.